The teckel is come to kind of denote a working wire hair dachshund of European hunting lines. So, dachshunds. A lot of people they see him like, oh, well, what is that? And then what kind of mix is he? Well, he's a wire hair dachshund, and in Europe, you're still required by law in many areas to hunt with a guide and a game master, Jägermeister, and then you have to have a dog legally for big game recovery. So if you're hunting.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. We are glad y'all are tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We are out there on the radio, on iTunes, Facebook, Instagram TV, YouTube. We're all over the place, and we're glad you're here with us. We are not in studio today. We are at the Jackson Kayak facility here in Sparta, Tennessee, and happy to have Mr. Damon Bungard with us. He is the product manager and brand manager for Jackson Kayaks, Orion Coolers and Kennels. So this is going to be a fun show, and I have Mr. Don King with me helping co-host.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for inviting me along to this one, Jason.
Yeah, don't normally have Don on the road with us. He's normally behind a camera or running the board, but he's going to join me today.
I know. I got out of the studio,
Yeah.
so we're good. We're good.
So glad to be out of studio and glad to have Damon with us, but we also have another special guest that we're going to bring out in just a few minutes.
That's right. Thanks you guys for coming. Welcome to Sparta, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And our factory.
Man, very impressive. And we just finished a tour that Damon led, and man, I tell you what, it is very impressive. All the work you've got going on here with the.
Well, we appreciate it. We're trying to make fun outdoor products, and we're all users ourselves. So
yeah.
we work really hard to make stuff that we use, and hopefully you enjoy using and are getting out and enjoying in Tennessee and elsewhere. So.
Tennessee products and homegrown, and got to walk through the. And I understand public tours are.
A
thing here,
Tuesdays
right?
and Thursdays.
Good.
You can get a hold of customer service, come in. I think it's usually around 9 and 1 p.m. where you can want to come in the lobby, check out products, or you want to do a tour of the factory, you're welcome.
And we are right here in the lobby where a lot of the products are on display. You can come in, check them out, and then now with the kayaks, I understand that's you got to work through the dealer on the kayaks, right?
Right. So we don't sell the kayaks out of the factory itself. You can go to the jacksonkayak.com and find a dealer link and look for a dealer near you in the state or elsewhere anywhere in the country. But then if you need Orion Coolers or Orion Kennels, we actually do sell those direct. You can go online, buy those, or you can come here and check them out.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great showroom here. A lot of stuff to look at, and a neat new pontoon type kayak
and that's
thing.
The new Blue Sky Boat Works.
Blue Sky
that's
Boat Works.
impressive.
Yeah.
Those are cool, and the kayaks are awesome to check out. And you should come by sometime. It's an awesome little lobby to check out. Products are great. And then, like I said, you can take tours if you want to on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yep.
So that's cool. We have a special guest with us today as well, inside one of the Orion Kennels here. Let's bring him out.
Yeah.
It's a teckel, and his name is Jaeger.
Yeah, this
All
is
right,
Jaeger.
Jaeger.
Hey, pal.
Come on out.
Awesome. Say hi to Jaeger. He is a trained tracking dog that assists in ethical recovery of big game. Is that right?
Correct.
And he is one of the.
If you're listening on the radio, he was is in the green room, which is actually his traveling.
It was actually green
kennel.
too.
This is his Orion Kennel rig. That's right. He was one of the
Exactly.
original product testers for me. We launched Orion commercially this January, so it's only a few months old. But over the last year and a half, we've been using product and traveling. And on all of Jaeger's tracks with me last year, he was riding in one to the track location, and then on the way home after, and all of our travels around the country, he's been all the way to Wyoming and Vermont and back, and everything else in an Orion. So
Neat.
He's done really good.
Well, tell us about these guys, the teckels in general, and then what he does here as far as tracking and that kind of thing.
Sure. So the teckel is come to kind of denote a working wire hair dachshund of European hunting lines. So, dachshunds, a lot of people, they see him like, oh, well, what is that? And then what kind of mix is he? Well, he's a wire hair dachshund. And in Europe, you're still required by law in many areas to hunt with a guide and a game master, Jägermeister, and then you have to have a dog legally for big game recovery. So if you're hunting boar, if you're hunting roebuck, different animals, you have to have a dog for recovery. And they've used them historically for a long time, just because you can't beat a dog's nose at a lot of things. And so teckels are still historically used there, and in the United States, just teckels kind of mean a working wire hair of European descent. So they're unlike American dachshunds that haven't had the strict hunting requirements kept on them as a breed. We've kind of turned them into couch potatoes in many ways. You're used to seeing dachshunds with really big chests and shorter legs than he has, and that kind of takes some of their field ability out. They're bred to do underground work. They're bred to be independent and hunt alone, but they're also really, really good, and they're specialists at big game tracking and using that nose. And they're independent thinkers, and that makes them really good at being able to distinguish an individual's deer scent from other deer in the group and focus on it. And a lot of people hear blood tracker. Well, good ones in teckels, they don't track off of blood. They actually track off of hoof print scent. Every deer has an interdigital gland, a gland in between that hoof.
Okay.
Wow.
So they can actually distinguish that and track quite a ways just off that hoof print. One of his tracks last year was almost a mile, and I think about 800 yards of that, there was no sign until the very end.
Wow.
Wow, that's awesome.
How old can that track be?
So there's dogs obviously that go into days, and when you start getting to really old tracks, breeds like bloodhounds, you start seeing more of. A lot of people like teckels because they're small and easy to handle. And in Tennessee, particularly a state like Tennessee, so Tennessee is an on-lead tracking state. So we can't let the dogs are not running loose when they're on a big game recovery. So when you have a track, there's a process. You can call the local game management office, let them know that you're going to go out and do a recovery. They have to be on lead, and that helps the dog from being able to. And his example of his tracking lead, so a very long lead.
Oh yeah.
Custom lead, and so the dog is controlled. He's not off spooking game. He's not crossing property lines. You shouldn't cross, things like that. So they're also good then in the sense that they're small. You can maneuver them, but they're great because you can maneuver through stuff. You don't have to lift them around. He's actually pretty amazing at what he can go up and over and through. And then you kind of fish the line and recover it.
And that for those listening that can't see, that line, how long is that? It's
30 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a limit on that, or just whatever you're
It depends on the
with?
state.
Okay.
So, if you go to, we are registered with UnitedBloodTrackers.org, and that's a national organization that does testing standards. And you can go to state regs, you can click on each state around the country, and you can see this individual state's regs for using dogs for game recovery. It's legal in most states. It's not, mainly a few western states. But some of the states, like Alabama, just to our south, you don't have to track on lead.
Okay.
And that kind of can make certain breeds better or worse. Teckels, again, it's their instinct. They're born to do it. A lot of dogs can be trained to do it. Some of them are just, like a lot of things. They need less practice than others might need.
Right.
They're just good at it, and that's even varies among litters. But he was bred by a breeder down near Atlanta, Vom Mountain Creek, kind of Mike Schlappa. He breeds Deutschdrahthaars and Rawhaar teckels. So Rawhaar teckel means roughed hair.
Okay.
Teckel, so wire-haired teckel in German. And so he's registered in Germany, and that's where his father still is. His mother's here. So
Cool. So speaking of training, tell us about some of the stuff that he's gone through, some of the things you have to do. And you said he was a level 2 or?
Yeah, so he was UBT 2 certified this past season. So United Blood Trackers has different events around the country. They have one big kind of yearly event called Track Fest, and people can bring their dogs and have it tested by judges. And so a lot of the testing standards for United Blood Trackers were built around the Deutsche Teckel Club and other European standards. So UBT2, for instance, is a track aged 20 hours. They do 2 artificial wound beds and 2 90-degree turns somewhere in a track of, I think, over 900 yards or almost a mile. So they'll age it, they'll lay that track, and they'll lay individual tracks for individual dogs registered to test, and then they'll go out with 2 judges and do the recovery test, and then he's passed it. So, he did that at just around 2 years of age. As a puppy with him, it was teckels, breeders that are experienced with them, they'll start imprinting deer hooves in their whelping pen, and they're very, very young. So they'll imprint really young on deer scent and hooves in particular. And then, as he was a puppy growing up, I would take him out and on my personal hunts his first season. When I was hunting, if I shot a deer and knew it fell, I just wouldn't go get it. I'd call that a practice track, right?
Yeah.
So I do training tracks, and that might be maybe I have a hoof in the freezer. Now when I recover a deer, I keep lung, I keep liver, I keep trachea, I keep a lot of different parts that maybe you wouldn't normally keep. And then I use it for training. So you can do liver drag. You can take a piece of liver and put line through it and drag that through grass and make some turns, different things. I'd use all kind of things. I was using rabbit hide. I used a pheasant skin I used for tying flies. I used just a lot of things, imprint scent, but a deer hoof. And then, let it age for 6 hours, let it age overnight, then bring them out and let them find it. And they just get excited and they learn, this is time to work. This is what I do. And so then that's a training track to me, kind of like, if you're an athlete, if you're training, you're in the gym, right? It's just, you're not actually doing anything, you're just getting strong. And then a practice track to me is like, I'm now a football player, I got the pads on, I'm hitting, I'm tackling, So if I'm out hunting and I'd shoot something, and even if I knew or didn't know where it fell, I would just mark the hit site, go home, get him, and then let him go find it. And then last season was the first season we started taking calls for strangers. It was really cool. His first track was actually, I was one of the guys at the TWRA SCI hunt down near the Volkswagen property in Chat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was down there. I was like, I'll bring Jaeger, and if any of the vets lose a deer, and kudos to TWRA for putting on events like that in the state. Really, really, really cool. There's all kind of opportunities for those guys. And so my hunter Juan, his second deer, he shot a buck, and I just thought it was hit a little funny. I didn't like the way it ran, so I marked I did find blood, found one drop. I was like, you know what? I was like, Jaeger's back at the hotel with my wife. We got hours. Let's just wait. And it's going to start raining around 1. It's only 9 in the morning. Let's just wait till about noon and come back. And at the time, Officer Pike, so the TWA agents were running all of us in and out of the stands down there. And so Officer Pike joined us, and sure enough, we needed him to help recover that deer.
Cool.
So
That's
and
awesome.
he was successful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
so happy hunter, they took the deer home. And, so it was good. He did a good job.
How long was that track?
That track was only, a few hundred yards, but what was great about that whole trip was, again, I had just put my name out publicly on the United Blood Tracker site, and I got a call from a young hunter down near Cleveland, and he said, "Hey, I found your name and information online. Do you have a dog?" I shot and lost a deer, and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Where are you?" I was like, "Fortunately, I had gathered up. I have a lot of friends in the industry. So Leupold had sent me some stuff for the guys. Revision Outdoor had sent me some glasses for all the guys. I was like, you know what? We have this cookout tonight. I was like, I'd love to come help you, but I have to be at this site, by this evening for the pre-cookout." And I was like, "Well, where are you?" And when he told me, I was like, "Man, you're like a half an hour from where I need to be." I'm like, you know what? I was like, let me see if I can go drop all these things off early, break off, come try to help you find your deer, and then I'll go back and be back in time for the cookout at the end. And so I did. I got down there, met with the guys hosting that, and then we took off and got to the hit site. And the young man had shot he told me he shot the deer the night before with his crossbow. So he shot it. Him and his father, they saw it, run into a wood line, cross the field, run into a wood line. Him and his father looked for it, bumped it, lost it. It rained heavy overnight, and then they went back the next morning and looked for it, couldn't find it, and found us. And I was like, okay, this could be a hard track. It's approaching 24 hours old. It's after a big rainstorm.
Right.
And people don't realize, a lot of those things, it's okay for these guys. Even if the blood gets washed away, the scent is there. A human can't see it. They can still smell it. And sure enough, and tracking is very much a team thing. Every one of the tracks has taught me something. So we took off, and sure enough, he went into the wood line where he saw the deer go into the wood line, and he started pulling one direction, and they're like, no, he was over here bedded. And I said, okay, so I pulled him off where he wanted to go and took him over, and he kind of lost interest, and I was like, you know what, he was saying pretty hard, let's go this way. And so we took the line back up he wanted, and again a few hundred yards of no sign whatsoever. And I was starting to doubt him, and I was, okay, he's just we were on a deer trail. I'm like, we're just on some different deer at this point. And I actually got my phone out to look at the satellite, 'cause I was starting to see a home in the distance. And I was like, maybe this deer went in home's backyard and they found it, or, who knows. Yeah. So the act of me taking my GPS out to look, there was a white rock near my foot, about this big, and it had 3 drops of blood on it. And I hadn't seen blood hundreds of yards.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, so he is still on this deer.
It, yeah.
So we continued down a ways again, and he lost interest. And I was like, you know what? Let's go back to that last known site and kind of study that a little bit. And you always hear those myths. They're not always myths, but you always tend to hear, if you shoot a deer, he's going to run downhill. Mm-hmm. Go look at water. Not always true, and that's one thing a dog will always, show you. Mm-hmm. So we go back and look at the rock, and I could see that the fingers from the splatter, they weren't pointing in our direction of travel at all. They were actually pointing back up the steep face.
Okay.
So sure enough, I set him back down, reset him, and he just took off. And I'm on my hands and knees under brush. We're crawling up this face, and it capped out on this. It was like the Briar Fields of all Briar Fields. I mean, I'm talking trophy 160 class Briars here. I mean, they were, his Briars as big around as my thumb, 12 feet in the air.
Oh, wow.
And I was literally trying to undo myself, see where he was. And I heard the gentleman's father say he found it, and looked over, and there the buck was, 20 yards into that stuff laying. And that's when I was like, you know what? Yahtzee, you got it. I was like, I'm not doubting you ever again. And I think what that buck had done was actually done a loop, and we kept trying to pull him off, thinking, here's the trail, we'll walk it. And no, he was telling me where to go.
He knew where it was.
And that, that myth of they run downhill, that buck went straight up, but he went up to an obvious bedding area. You know, he was wounded, but he went to where he felt comfortable, and so that often can be more important than what the terrain really is.
Hey, speaking of soldier hunts, can just tell us a little bit about your connection to the military and your?
Sure. So I grew up as an Army dependent. Actually, my father's a retired colonel, so I moved all over the world. We lived in Germany for a while, so I went to school at Clemson and got involved in paddling there at a high level, professional level, and moved to Vermont right after Clemson and worked in the aerospace and defense industry up there for many years. So I worked with Goodrich, which became United Technologies, and then General Dynamics. They have a big office in Burlington, and spent a lot of years, and a lot of those guys that knew the system. One of the products that we fielded was called the Chameleon system. It was a counter IED system, a jamming system for our guys over in the desert.
Neat.
And so that, as those projects were kind of wrapping up, I was always still active in the outdoors. I was still hunting, and I was fishing. I was traveling the world, still paddling when I could. And I had a break coming up about, it was going to take 3 months off in between projects. And Eric Jackson, who started Jackson Kayak, asked me to come manage product development here. So I made that transition.
Awesome.
Thought I'd give it a shot. I was like, the cubicles are always going to be there,
Yeah.
you don't know how often.
Try something new.
Yeah. So I worked remotely, and then we moved down here in 2014.
Oh, neat.
We live down near Fall Creek Falls State Park, which is a beautiful park.
Welcome to Tennessee.
Yeah, and so as an Army brat, I've been all over. A lot of my family's from South Carolina, so now we're kind of closer. My folks are in Savannah, Georgia.
And your allegiance to orange is good either way.
Orange is
Tennessee.
good. I'm in a state that likes orange, and that's good. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to hit on was Jaeger. What's his reward for finding the deer?
Oh yeah,
so I just try to give him a lot of praise.
Okay.
He's kind of funny. He's never been a treat oriented dog. He kind of ignores them. And the only thing he really responds to, honestly, is raw game meat. He'll do whatever I want him. If I'm making dinner, I take a backstrap out, or I take whatever cut, or even hamburger. I follow him to sit, stay. He'll do it for raw meat. But he's an independent dog, and that's good. He's a high drive dog, so
I saw you just a minute ago pick up a treat and put it on the table here in front of him, and he kind of looked at it a couple times. Then he went ahead and and ate it.
That's one of the things I do now. I like the organs that I keep. I'll take the heart and I'll cut them up and make him and bake him into dog treats, so that when I'm training him, he's something that really motivates him. He knows what it is.
I've seen him
Trachea the same way.
Get excited in some of the videos where y'all found the deer and he's just wallering around having a good time. Like,
he gets to it and he'll dig it out, roll on his back sometimes. And there's a funny clip when he was a puppy. We took him to Wyoming, and again it was all practice tracks there, antelope give off a certain musk to him, and he would just love that. He was rolling around in it. And, the deer he finds now, if you watch some of his videos, are on YouTube. There's a few buck recoveries, a doe recovery, and a wild hog recovery here in Tennessee. And he kind of, he's really fired up on the track, and you'll see him like when he's on a hot scent, he kind of loses it.
Yeah.
But then he finds that he just kind of chills out and lays down. He's like, well, what's next? Where are we going? Like, what are we going to go find now?
Yeah.
So.
Well, tell us one other thing. All this gear on your kennel here. Let's talk about some of the gear it takes to get him through the woods, in the woods, and
Sure.
also how to see some of his work on YouTube and stuff like that.
Sure. So, when we track, we've already talked about having the lead. You'll see it on some of his videos. He's wearing these are Rec Specs goggles. And
those briar patches, I'm sure. Oh man,
yeah, you can see the scratches
on those.
So he actually got a couple eye scratches on tracks, and I started looking around for some eye protection because he kind of gets some reckless abandon and just kind of charges. Mm-hmm. So he'll often put on goggles for his recoveries. As I look at the terrain and see what it's like. Usually he wears a harness. Here's his Jaeger Tracks game recovery.
Oh yeah,
harness.
Where can you find him on Instagram?
So he's at Jaeger Tracks. There he is
at
Jaeger Tracks.
Cool.
That's his Instagram account, and that's just we kind of put stuff on there as it happens, and then the videos are on my personal YouTube page, just Damon Bungard.
Okay, cool.
And then I always have a med kit. This is that I keep handy.
Mm-hmm.
And this has got stuff for me and for him. The main thing I'm worried about with them is just puncture wounds. If a buck is alive, they can often turn and try to gore a dog.
Sure.
So one thing, him being on lead helps with that. But then just running through things and impaling on something that I didn't know was there in the ground.
Yeah, you
and
never
then
know.
He is always wearing a GPS collar, and that's for two reasons. One, just if something goes wrong, something breaks on his lead, something breaks on his harness, I can get him back because his recall when he's on the track is not, I'm going to say, stellar. So he makes me really nervous if we get tracking near roads or something where he could get loose. So
right.
I always have him on GPS in case something does happen there. Mm-hmm. But it's also really helpful for me to go back and study the path the animal took and how much ground we covered. Mm-hmm. So I can then, after a track, go back and look and see how far we walked. If he did correction loops, sometimes they'll break off, and they'll run a correction loop of their own, and they'll go off and they'll come right back where they were and keep going as they're exploring. So, and a lot of that's been me learning that with him, learning to read the dog. I'm definitely the weak link in the tracking team. It was funny when the judges at the UBT trials, they're like, yeah, you just need to get rid of that dog. He doesn't, he doesn't know what he's doing. And they were like, there were a couple times we didn't know if you were going to let him pass the test. So they were like, that dog was so good, I was going to take the lead from you. So it was. So I'm still doing a lot of learning, and that's the fun part. But there's a lot of learning to read the dog's language, how excited their wag is, what their body language is like.
Yeah.
And then, if you do have to do a reset, when to make that call, and all of those factors. It's just tracking has become it's like hunting mixed with a really awesome game of Clue.
Yeah.
So,
That's
that's some of the gear. And I always have water for him. People don't realize that overheated dogs, how much their scent capacity goes down. So when they're really panting and stuff, they can't scent very good. So you want to control a dog's pace, try to keep him hydrated, and keep him so that nose of his can do its job.
Right.
Well, I know it's been a short time, but how many has he recovered in a year?
So last year we did 10.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
was that 10 for 10?
He was. Let's see. He was, I think, 7 for 10.
Okay.
And the ones that we didn't find, like one of the recoveries, we called it at a property line, and the hunter called me about 2-3 days later and said, "Hey, I talked to the property owner. He saw buzzards. I went over there, and the deer was laying where Jaeger said it was. So we just called it, at the line.
Count that one for Jaeger anyway.
I consider that a find.
Yeah, definitely.
Another one, the hunter called and said, "Hey, I got it on camera." 3 weeks later, it's still alive. So then that happens. The fact is, you don't call out the dog on the easy recoveries. So you don't. there's a lot of animals that the dog gets called on that's just still walking around. They
Sure.
survived the hit. But that's good. Ultimately, I think putting in the effort, and taking an animal's life it's a serious thing. So putting in the effort and using the resources available to you to recover it,
Sure.
it's good. And finding those resources, you can go to UnitedBloodTrackers.com or .org, and there's a find a tracker function right there. So if you live there anywhere in Tennessee or in the country, you can go and click on that, put in your zip code, and there'll be a list of trackers in your area that'll come up, and then you can give them a call and see if they're available to come out.
What a great resource, really.
And then you said there's a Facebook group here in Tennessee that you.
There is. There's also Tennessee Blood Trailing Network. There's a Facebook group, very well communicated. A lot of times, myself, I may be on a hunt or I may be traveling out of the state. Jaegers, we're heading to a elk hunt in Colorado, for instance, in September, and then we're going to be hunting in Texas in November. So somebody calls me, November's a busy time. We're at a lot of deer getting shot,
right.
And you can just go on there, and a lot of times I'll just get somebody's information. I'll say, I'm not available, but this person is. Or, you can go in there and say, hey, I have this person, this county, here's their phone number, reach out. And so United Blood Trackers at the end of the season, did a poll of trackers around the country, and all the species recovered through the season. And I think at last count, it was approaching 5,000 recoveries.
Wow.
So when you just think about that amount of meat alone, and not everything that's recovered is maybe coyotes got to it first, or maybe it's lost, but still for the most part it's saved meat.
Sure.
Right.
So you just think about and that's everything from moose to bear to deer to elk. I mean, that was all species, and so it's pretty impressive as a resource, and the Europeans have known that for a long time. Changing the laws and working with state regulators on how to make it an effective tool and resource for hunters.
Right. Well, you are a hunter, and tell us about the BHA. We've had a couple of members on, and you're part of the BHA. And talk about some of your public land hunting experiences in Tennessee. We got a couple minutes left.
Sure. So, I've been fortunate to hunt my whole life and travel, and I hunt a lot of public land. Where when I moved here, Tennessee, I started looking at Tennessee options for public land hunting. And so Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is a national group really focused on conservation of public land resources and how to use them. So, TWR's website, all the WMAs you can access. Some are lottery, some are open, and those are great resources. Up around me, there's 4 or 5. And so it's to me that's a great resource to have. I commend the Tennessee Wildlife for trying to manage those and getting people access. Whether it's like the lottery hunt or different zones like Hiawassee. We did the kayak hunt at Hiawassee on film, Jackson Kayak, and then other just open zones that happen on a limited basis. Fall Creek Falls has their archery hunt on their very limited week, and then but other zones are open all the time. Yeah. So it's just a great resource and one that I like exploring.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Damon. We appreciate Jaeger for being on with us and being such a good boy, although he wanted to play some music in the middle of the show there. That's okay. But appreciate you letting us come out and tour the facility and be a part of this and learn more about what you guys do.
Yeah, appreciate it. And keep spreading the good word about all the public resources we have here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
On both in the woods and on the water.
We appreciate you doing that. Definitely. And come by and check out the place. They got some great products. And
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
Public tours. Call and line one up.
Yeah, Jaeger probably won't be here.
Yeah.
He might. You never know.
Well, I normally would plug our social media, but today I'm going to plug Jaeger at Jaeger Tracks on Instagram. So go check him out. But don't forget about us out there. We're out there everywhere. tnwildlife.org is a great place to find all the information we provide. So we thank y'all for tuning in. We'll thank Jaeger and Damon for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.